Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. Hello and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. It is July. It is the 2nd of July. Good morning if you're having this over breakfast. Good evening if you're having this over din-dins. And whatever it is when you're watching this, enjoy it, have fun. We're going to have a laid-back show today, so it's going to be reasonably easy to get through. So I'm hoping to entertain you, and we will provide some information on the side. Hello, Mr. Speaker, sir. How was your week?
Good evening. Yeah, good evening to everybody. All good. Somewhat laid back, a bit tired, and on one of my 7-day juice fasts at the moment. So day one today. So by the time we come around next week, I will have finished that.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
I do that.
I read now that the juice is actually not as good as actually eating the fruit itself, because there seems to be something lacking in the juice that the fruit has, and I don't know. So I saw now that they recommend eating rather than drinking, even though a lot of times people say, "Oh, you get the same thing." I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, I
welcome
mean,
to
maybe
the
it's
chat.
slightly better. Maybe it's slightly better.
Yeah,
But
I
this
don't
is
know. I
all
really
done.
don't know. But you're not doing it for like general mineral and whatever replenishment or something. For you, it's like a cleansing factor, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's see what we get on with today.
Welcome to the chat. Welcome to everybody who is watching live. And if you are sitting at home, you've just heard how you can participate, how you can contribute, how you can be part of the live show if you want it. Please feel free to leave us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, even if you don't like it. You know, it's an opinion that you're entitled to have, and that's cool. It would be nice if you could tell us why and what we can do to improve. But hey, anybody's entitled to their opinion, and that is the beauty of it. So what we're going to do is, you heard in the intro, so I'm going to start off with something completely different. Because what I do in the beginning, something that I have not mentioned in the intro, is I like to show an inspirational poster. Now, if you go to a Muslim group, be it a forum, be it a Facebook group, be it wherever, you will find that they have millions and millions of these pictures, sometimes 5 or 6 an hour, where different people show you pictures, and then they write, well, type 1 if you love Muhammad, and then you have 50,000 people typing 111
yeah.
on, you know, dutiful.
I've seen that. Say mashallah or something like that as well. Right?
Exactly.
You get these long posts with all that sort of stuff.
And what they always start off with, or usually, is one of these things. So this is why I think it's for me anyway, it's good fun to show them at the beginning and then to look at them critically to see what it is that these are actually telling us. So if you don't try to wake up for Fajr, this is the morning prayer, there's really no benefit in you waking up at all.
Really? Is that what the benefit of life is?
Well,
It's so
if you
it's so myopic. It's so so constrained, isn't it? It's
if you
if
don't,
you
you
don't
are
get up to
lacking a
worship.
purpose.
Yeah. I watched something recently where this whole thing comes up again. Like if you don't get up to worship, your Creator incessantly, you shouldn't wake up at all. Well, excuse us. A, we need higher standards, but B, that's not quote unquote the purpose of our lives. And if you claim that that's an objective purpose, well, then I'd rather not have an objective purpose if that's what it's supposed to be. So I'm
Yeah,
quite happy not having it.
exactly. I always say, look, the toaster has a purpose. I don't. I'm more than a toaster because I have ambitions, I have satisfaction, I have challenges, I have all sorts of things which um, I consider to be of a higher level than just a single purpose, which is what Muslims have. They have this one and only purpose, and that is to pray to the Creator that they need to be grateful for, who is entitled to this worship and the only one who deserves worship. Where, once again, nobody understands how this is supposed to work, how a God who does not need human beings creates human beings and tells them, because he doesn't need it, to go and pray. Because he doesn't need worship, he tells them, you need to worship me, which he doesn't need. And then forgets to tell them how to do that. So when his instruction booklet is issued, it doesn't contain how to worship, so he has to send some people to fix this mistake, to tell the people and show the people how to do this worship thing, but they don't really understand it. So then the people who botch up the job have to be replaced by other people later on, but by now the chain of narration has been corrupted, so you get different versions. Some say your feet need to be straight up. Some people say the feet should be to one side. Some people say the feet should be spread to either side. So you have different versions of the prayer. And if you do it wrong, you have a very strict God who is going to punish you for doing it wrong. But he doesn't tell you which way is right. So, it's all a game and Allah knows best.
Yeah.
I have two short pieces of news. One, I think, is not a big surprise for people. Actually, maybe it is, because in India, this is from the Times of India, and it says that the majority of Indian Muslims support Islamic courts. Now remember, Muslims always say that if you're in a country, you're supposed to go according to the local law. And then they don't. So do as I say, no, don't do as I say, but do as I do, or it's the other way around. Or I don't do as I say, but I do as I do. I can't remember which way it is. But in New Delhi, a significant majority of Muslims support having access to their religious courts for settlement, and now get this, of family disputes involving inheritance or divorce cases. And this is a Pew Research study that has found this out. I don't know how that works. Especially we know that inheritance is so horribly flawed, and yet Muslims go and take Sharia courts, religious courts, to sort out inheritance. And in my eyes,
As long as they don't use those verses in the Quran, right? As long as they don't get one of those.
Well, they can't. This is why they use the inheritance calculators. And I don't know if you guys remember, if you use these inheritance calculators, you first have to specify whether you are Hanbali, Shafi, Hanafi, or whatever. So it depends on, again, you get different prayer variations depending on the group that you are in, and your inheritance changes depending on what group you're in. So they don't take the Quran sentences. I mean, who cares what a God says? No, we need to go what Mr. Hanbali says or Mr. Shafi or Mr. Wahhabi. I mean, Mr. Wahhab, sorry. And this is what is then the law, and this is what is being applied. So Muslims themselves don't even know in advance how the inheritance works, because it all depends on the madhab, on the group that you are in, on the jurisprudence grouping that you have selected. It's quite weird. So anyway, the study by the American think tank reveals that both Muslims and Hindus, by the way, prefer to live religiously segregated lives when it comes to matters of marriage, friendship, and some elements of public life. So the political element of Islam and of, I didn't even know that Hinduism was also had also this political segment, but it seems that there is something like that. And they don't go to a secular court, but they go to the religious, I don't know, whatever court, I don't know what court Hindus go to. So they go to the Sharia court, and Muslims then go and say, well, that's what we will take. Well, surprise. What I find quite, what should I call this? It's not, well, it's sick, it's uninformed, it's a bit silly. Because a man in the Las Vegas Valley has been arrested for an alleged hate crime after he was apparently filmed smearing bacon onto the home and car of a Muslim family. Now, this is exactly why we have the Gin and Tonic show. All right, so smearing bacon, like doing this as a personal act of vengeance because some Muslim flew a plane into a tower in 2001. That is so silly. It is so wrong. It is so... I can't even express my disgust at somebody who is such a lowlife, who will go and let out his anger on someone else who is loosely in some way associated with someone who committed a crime. That's crazy. That's like, going and slapping a blonde woman because some blonde woman cut you off on the highway. You can't do that. And smearing bacon on the home of a car, that's stupid. That's outright silly. So this is the kind of thing that we try and educate people on. We try and show people, look, it's not the bacon, it's just the thing that pork is not allowed according to the Quran. Now, there's no explanation for it. There's no reason there. There's nothing given. It's just a command by the God, don't eat pork. And that's it. And that is why, for them, pork is something that they, detest. But now, trying to harass somebody by smearing bacon on this, that's not only childish, it's really silly. And the funny thing is, the guy has been arrested, and he's being accused of harassing a Muslim family, and now faces charges of harassment, stalking, and being a nuisance. Now, those three things, I didn't know that being a nuisance is a crime, arrestable crime in the US, being a nuisance. But it's a lot better than being charged with a hate crime, because that to me is still, I don't know what that is. But facing charges of stalking, okay, this I can understand. But smearing bacon, I mean, this is such a childish act. This is why we here try and tell people, don't do silly things like that. Don't let out on a Muslim what might have been, done in the name of Islam. So, if you want to go and critique something, go and critique the ideology, not the people.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Nigel.
This gentleman has been following the JNT even before I was, and maybe even before you, I don't know, but 12 years ago, huh? Wow.
Dimi Whittaker. Wow.
Well, we're glad we're still going, albeit with new hosts, or at least one new host.
We've been shut down. I mean, Gin and Tonic has been shut down so many times. But it's good to hear. And Rob said I should mention this because I got a message now from someone who said that he came across my videos, and he then started thinking about this because what I said made sense to him. And after questioning his belief, he said, well, there's no real reason for me to believe what I believe. And then after a while, he actually came out of it. And he felt so relieved. And now he wrote to me and said, listen, what do you think is a good approach? Because I want to do the same thing with my cousin, because I showed him some of your videos and he was like, oh my fuck, and oh my goodness, I never knew about this. Because Muslims, I don't know if you've heard Dr. Yasser Qadi when he said that Muslims are allowed to investigate up to a red line. And they cannot cross that red line, which somebody like me, I can cross it. I can go and investigate Islam to any level of depth that is required. Muslims are not allowed to do that. They need to stop when it comes to getting sensitive towards disproving or showing something that is not in line with Islam. And this is why they never heard about these things. And he said, what can I use with my cousin? Because he is now starting to question his belief as well. So I said to him, no, don't go and make the mistake that I used to make 10 years ago. Or even up to, Rob still knows that I was doing this, that I was confronting people. I was shouting at them and saying, well, listen, I was trying to shake them. And I realized that doesn't work because it only entrenches them more. So the way that I go today, no, rather ask them questions. And I'm notoriously bad at this, all right, because I get emotional, and going the Socratic approach with me simply doesn't work, because at some stage I go into debate mode. Therefore, I say, okay, just start asking questions. Don't necessarily go street epistemology. This is the, high level. Go low level. Just ask, why do you do this? Why do you have this? Why do you think this? Are you aware of this? What would it take? Da, da, da. And this is quite strange that a lot of people can't do that, because this is something that even I can do. Whatever happened to Klingshaw? Still friends? No, unfortunately not. Klingshaw got picked up by some communists, and he was influenced. Now, remember, Klingshaw was a Buddhist, he was a Christian, he was all sorts of things, and a Muslim. So he tended to take these things on board. What I didn't like is two things. One thing is, during a gin and tonic show, he invited somebody else on, who then, and he tried to catch me off guard, because this is Klingshaw bringing somebody else in. So I was totally not prepared to what happened, because the guy questioned me, and he came with funny ideas from communism, and asked why I was doing this and why I wasn't doing this, and blah, blah, blah. So I said, look, no, there's no reason to think like that. But Klingshaw then decided, he rang me up and said, look, I can't anymore, because my views have changed, and I cannot commit to the things that we are doing on the show. So I said, oh, okay. And then I did this for a while. Then it got closed down because Muslims didn't like it. And then I reopened now under this label. And then one day Klingshaw came to me and said, could I please stop the Gin and Tonic show? And I said, no, why would I do that? And he said, well, because anybody can see this and see that in his past he was making funny comments about Islam. And then he said, I should delete all my videos where I refer to him, because there are some videos with 1001 inventions where we both made videos about this, and I used some of his material, he used some of mine, and he said to me, I should delete all that. And I said, Klingshaw, fuck off. And I said to him, this is not fair. There's a lot of people, even Sylvester Stallone at some stage did porn. Now, this is part of his development. This is part of his personality. This is part of his portfolio. Now, everybody knows that, but nobody's going to go now and say, well, Sylvester Stallone did porn, and therefore Taxi Driver is or what was his most, no, Rocky, sorry. Rocky is something that you need to totally ignore, or the Rambo.
Yeah, Rocky or Rambo. I was muted and I was saying both of those.
Oh, okay. So these are the things that you can't just simply now ignore and suppress because he used to do porn. That's crazy. It's part of your development. It's part of what you are, part of your personality. And the same thing applied, and I said this to Klingshaw. I said, look, this is part of you. This is part of your journey. This is part of what you did. And I'm not going to do anything of the sort. If you have a personal problem with what you did in the past, well, then that is your personal problem and not mine. And you cannot expect other people to sort out your personal life, the problems that you have with that now. And that's where we left it. And I haven't heard from him since, which is a pity, because I thought we became quite good buddies because we did this for many, many years. And it's a pity to see somebody just, be picked up and then brainwashed into and indoctrinated to believe something completely ridiculous. So, yeah. Okay, sorry, that was a long explanation for a very short question. Then,
No worries.
So we did the harassment of the Muslim family, which I think is a disgrace, that people cannot distinguish between the people and the ideology. I always say there's three things. We need to learn about Islam, we need to learn about how to distinguish between the people and the ideology, and we need to learn what Islam means today in the form of political Islam in the society that we have in the 21st century. And those are the three things that we need to learn. And these are the three things that I think that we should convey here on the Gin and Tonic Show, because I think we are being objective enough to not smear individual people. Yes, we critique individual people who make claims. Like yesterday, there was supposed to be a show by Hamza Tzortzis. And he used to make claims like, once or twice a week. And then I used to make a video refuting those claims. And every single claim that he made, I refuted. And yes, I shot him down and I said, Hamza, you are lying. Because lying is to intentionally say something that you know is not true in order to deceive somebody else. And this is what I said to him. I said to him, you are lying to people. And I showed this. Now, there I get personal. And yesterday he was supposed to have another show. Now, I'm not arrogant enough to believe that he cancelled it because of me, because he saw that I was there and I announced to him that I was going to do the same thing again, and that is to refute him. But he cancelled in the last second while it was supposed to go on, and suddenly it said, well, we'll see you in 6 days. So the whole thing has been postponed because he was supposed to talk about atheists, because he's so afraid. I mean, Muslims in general are so shit scared of atheists because they really don't know what they are. This is the problem. Okay, should we go to the next segment?
Yep.
Which is what? Here we go. I love this so much. I know I'm childish, but I like it. So let us start with this one. Okay, is it big enough? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Oh, this is the last one. I want to keep this until last because this is actually the most brilliant comment I've ever had. And it's not crazy, but it's beautiful. That's why I want to keep it till the end. I started on the wrong side. So, Rob, this is yours. You go for it.
Yeah, so this comes from the video we're going to critique tonight. And this fellow says, I like the new approach of Brother Imran. Rather than convincing the intellect, try to connect with the heart. Now, if we just stop for a moment and unpack what that actually means. So don't use intellectual or rational arguments to convince somebody. Try to connect with the heart. Now, obviously, this is metaphorical in some way. Presumably, this means, come at it with an emotional type of response. Now, you can do an emotional one, but then you just can't claim to be doing something rational because, as pointed out here, you're not using the intellect, so you're appealing to an emotion, and an appeal to emotion it's an informal fallacy because it doesn't necessarily mean that you are correct, but it can be quite powerful on occasions, but it's not something that we would bring up in a rational discussion. And obviously, if you are attempting to have a rational discussion, then bringing up an appeal to emotion is not going to be a good idea. So. But obviously, connecting with the heart in any concrete, meaningful sense doesn't actually make sense. What is that? What do you mean to connect with the heart? I mean, the heart's connected with veins and blood vessels and all the rest of it. So obviously, we have to take it metaphorically. And so I just think this is completely backwards because anybody can connect with somebody's heart. and somebody could be convinced for an emotional reason that isn't necessarily intellectual or rational. But why would other people do that? And that's open to anybody at any time. So that's not a good methodology to use unless you feel like they're too intellectually strong or something like that. So you want to try a different approach. But I just thought it was, and this was pinned, by the way. So this is the top comment in the video we'll play towards the end of the show. And you can see some of the other comments.
Yeah, and we're trying to do the exact opposite. We're trying to be objective. We're trying to be rational. We're trying to not let emotion get the better of us. And this is exactly the opposite. So, I don't know. Okay, another one said, I invite everyone to listen to the Holy Quran. And I second that. That is the best thing that you can do. Because if somebody else tells you what it says in the Quran, maybe you're a Muslim. But if you read the Quran yourself, you're an atheist. Because you can't be, if you read the Quran, there's no way that you can remain a Muslim. It's only if other people tell you what it says. But reading it yourself, no way.
Yeah, if you can even understand it, that's the first thing. If you can make sense of it, and you've got your critical thinking hat on, then I don't see how you could possibly be a Muslim. You have to interpret it differently, or you have to, stop using your critical faculties at some point.
Two comments. You are doing awesome job, my brother. Now, I don't know what awesome job he's doing. You will see this just now. Mashallah, what a beautiful video. These are the kind of comments you see all the time. The third kind of comment, where actually I should have put this in there as well. What's the name of the nasheed? So if people don't know what to say, if they have no clue what is going on, this is the kind of thing they write. What is the name of the nasheed? You're doing a great job. What a beautiful video. But they don't tell you why. They don't tell you what is good, what is bad, whatever. It's amazing. And yesterday in the comments, because I was waiting for Hamza to come on, there was a girl who said, well, this is my first month as a Muslim, and I'm very curious, is it okay if I have a crush on Hamza? And somebody came, sister, we are not here to discuss your crush. We are here to discuss serious things. And I just said to her, welcome to Islam. I mean, after 1 month, this is how she's being treated. This is already an indication that you're not allowed to do anything that is against Islam or something. You're only allowed to do one thing, and that is go and pray and go and praise the people. You are not allowed to say anything bad about somebody else. So I've never heard somebody, well, not never, but it's very rare that you see somebody correct another Muslim or say something as a matter of critique or something, if it's another Muslim.
Yeah.
Love your videos, Imran. May Allah bless you, brother. I have a question. How do I prove that God exists to an atheist? Boy.
That's the age-old question. It's been going on for thousands of years. It doesn't have a definitive answer, so I'm not sure that you're going to be able to get one from him.
That is what I actually answered. I should have included my answer here, because I said to him, look, theists have tried for roughly 50,000 years to prove their gods exist, and they've always failed. So you cannot prove that God exists. The only thing that you can do is you can have faith. Because if you did have proof, then you wouldn't need faith. Then it would be a fact. And this is the funny thing that these people don't think. They never finish this line of thought. I don't know why they stop like after one sentence or one couple of words. This one is good. What you're saying makes absolute sense, alhamdulillah. There is no coincidence in life. I was just having some tea and toast at lunch inside my flat watching this video out of YouTube algorithm. You talked about atheism and how the Quran debunks it. Me, at the same time, with my heart in that belief, saying Surah Fatiha should be read before eating or beginning to eat, contemplating on its truth. And at the same time, you say, look first at ayah of Surah Fatiha, or Fatiha. Subhanallah. So there is no coincidence. Just as he was thinking about saying this thing that you pray before you eat, there goes Imran saying that you should pray before you eat. What a wonderful thing. This is, alhamdulillah, this is the will of a God. He doesn't think that, yes, people tell you that you should be praying. So the only coincidence is that you're watching a video while you're eating. That's it. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's obviously people that don't recognize that humans remember the hits and they forget the misses. How many times did you think of something and nothing ever corroborated it? Probably 10 or 100 times more than the times that you have this coincidence. And of course, it is a coincidence, but he doesn't think so because there's a bias to be looking for these connections, right? And if you're looking for it, your mind will find them. But it will also at the same time delete all of the times you'll forget about. You won't, pay attention to all of the misses when you thought something and nothing happened. You had this thought, you had this, emotion or whatever the case is, and nothing came of it. Or you had a premonition, but actually it didn't turn out anything to happen. And you'll just wave that away. But the few times when this actually does happen, then you'll hold on to it and you'll say exactly what's happening here. And we know this is a cognitive sort of defect in human beings to do this. So we've got to guard against it. But if you don't know it, then this is the sort of comment you'll get.
Is the name, is it Dan Barker?
Yeah, he's one of the prominent atheists, yeah.
Who explained this and who said, well, all you need to do is think, how many times have I started eating, watched a video, and nobody told me to think of Fatiha or Fatiha? So, and there you have it. That's exactly what Rob is saying, because there's millions of times that you've started eating, watched something, and nothing happened. But the one time that you start eating and somebody tells you you should be thinking about that, that's the one that you remember. This is exactly what he was saying. It's a flawed function of the brain. Now, this is a different video, one that Hamza said also about atheists. And this brother Hamza has broke the bones of their prophets, the prophets of atheism. So all who's talking against him are either uneducated or intellectually dishonest. Right. So if I find that Hamza Sources is lying and I call him a liar, then I am uneducated and intellectually dishonest. I always think, what am I supposed to do? What am I? This reminds me of what happens in the US now with Trump, because he's been indicted of crimes and people are saying, yeah, well, it's just a witch hunt. Okay? So what do they want? Is it the case that if somebody commits the crime of tax fraud, you should investigate them unless their name is Trump? Or how do they think this works? The same thing with this guy. If I find something that Hamza is saying that is wrong, that is factually incorrect, should I say, yes, it is wrong? Oh, no, it's Hamza who says it. No, then I leave it. I don't comment on it. What is it that these people want? Do they want, some people to be sacrosanct, or I don't know what the hell is going on in the brains of these people.
Yeah, I don't know who the prophets of atheism are. Presumably, you can only speculate, but maybe it's like the four horsemen or atheists or something. But of course, there's no prophets in atheism. So again, this comparison is just vacuous, and it tells you a lot about the person making it. Right? When I hear claims like this, I know that somebody like this is not going to be able to have a nuanced, sort of intellectually honest conversation. I know that this is, and I'm a lay person, but I know that this is a lay person. I don't want to be sort of punching down, if you like. And these sort of comments sort of tell you that sort of stuff. And you can hear it in how people speak. It's very quick. You can tell whether somebody has like a level of knowledge or cognitive ability to have a nuanced and perhaps interesting discussion, and those that can't.
And it broke the bones. Why is it always so violent? I don't know why. Okay, good work, Hamza. Keep doing the great work of spreading the truth. Isn't that ironic? I've just spoken about what I found that he is. May Allah be with you. Followers of the atheistic religious seems quite upset, and as usual are uttering nonsense. They can't handle it if you go and refute them. Yeah.
The irony of that comment, especially the last part, not realizing that applies to him. And obviously, the fact that atheism is supposed to be some sort of religion is just laughable. Again, it just sort of tells you about the interlocutor, right? You know, you're not really going to have any sort of substantive discussion with somebody who makes comments like that.
But it's also funny that somebody like Hamza really cannot get himself to remove the blinkers and to look left and right and imagine what it might be like to have a life without a God. They are always, and even Sources is somebody who will try to align non-belief with belief, which you can't do. You know, it's if you play soccer and somebody does not play soccer, you can't compare them when it comes to soccer, because you know the one plays, the other doesn't. So there's nothing, there's no way that you can in any way align them or compare them when it comes to soccer. And I don't quite understand why they cannot go and liberate themselves from this line of thinking, that they always think there is a group of people, which is, well, if we are theists and we are a group and we have this God, then they don't have this, so they must also be a group. So they must also think like we think, and that is that you have one worldview, so that everything that you do in life, you have to first run through a filter, which is not believing in God. And they don't understand how silly that is for somebody who does not believe that gods exist. You know, it's waking up. I don't wake up in the morning and I think, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through the day when there's no God? This does not happen. But this is how they figure it. This is how they think. Our minds are constantly revolving around this idea that there's no God. I don't think about gods the same way as I don't think about, I don't know, collecting stamps or about the existence of dragons or Yeti or, I don't know, Loch Ness monster or things like that. It just doesn't occur to me. So, yeah, it's quite strange. Then we have, I'd argue it's specifically Christians. I'm Christian and I go to videos like these because they have less atheists in the comment section. And I wrote there, why do you think that is? Because we all get blocked and banned. We're not allowed to comment here. That's why you have less atheists in the comment section.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, most of the atheists are focused on Christianity rather than Islam as well. So that'll be another reason. I mean, Islam
That's
is just
true,
the weaker arguments of, you know, they're borrowing from Christianity, but they're just not as sophisticated. So most atheists won't really take the time to go into it.
And it's funny how a lot of people actually think that Islam is very complex and difficult to debunk or refute or whatever. And it's not. Islam is so weak and it's actually amazing. Atheists just want to look smart because the existence of God is so self-evident. So they want to doubt it. I can put my hand in fire. If you throw an atheist in the middle of the ocean in a storm, they will cry to God to save them. Well, you've just lost a hand.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. That doesn't sound like a fully coherent comment. You've got to try and work out what's being said there.
Well,
how
it's
does
the
it
old
that it's
argument.
so self-evident? Yeah.
There's no atheists in foxholes. You know, it's so old and it's been refuted. I mean, it's silly. But this is exactly how the imagination works. Once you get into a dangerous situation, then you will start praying to God because it is so self-evident. And this is also what this Imran, what Sources, what all these people are actually saying. It's normal to have a God. How can there not be not a God? How can there be not a God? There you go. So it's astonishing. Okay, and this was my favorite. And this is, I love this comment because it shows exactly how this works. A family situation brought me to anxiety, stress, and you are right. Allah in His wisdom and His Quranic words can save your life. Just keep returning to Allah and crying out to Allah, strengthen me. I put my trust in you, and until you end up doing just that by repeating those words, Alhamdulillah. And that's exactly what happens. This is what catches people. And that is what convinces them of the existence of their God, because it comforts them. It gives them hope. It increases this oxytocin level and funny things when you start thinking like that. And these are things that make sense to me. You know, that you have a difficult situation, and then thinking that there is this superpower, this Superman. It's like the bat signal. You know, you're in trouble, and you send the signal out into the sky so that Batman sees it and he can come to the rescue. That's exactly what this is to me. And it makes sense. You know, there are people who in a moment of stress, moment of anxiety or personal loss or whatever, will think that this is comforting them. And I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, but anybody can get comfort from anything, really. So that's, that doesn't tell us much other than, hey, you found something that, subjectively you get comfort from. But anybody could do the same with anything. They could rub a stone or, chant or whatever the case may be and get some of that. But the other thing is it's a one-way conversation, right? They keep asking, but they never get anything. But instead of accepting that or acknowledging that, they look for those coincidences and say, look, this prayer was answered. And then, as we've pointed out earlier, you just ask, how many times have you prayed and nothing's happened? And if they're intellectually honest, they'd have to say, yeah, it happens, 100 times more than the times that I claim that it has been answered. And so, either he's not listening or he doesn't want to or can't do anything about it. But, at this stage, when you push enough, they'll just get to the mystery of God, right? God knows best, or, he's got his ways, or whatever the case is. It's an unfalsifiable claim. I said it. I happened to be on Discord the other day, and a similar sort of thing came up. And I just said to the guy, I smell a rat. And I asked the question that I often ask in this case is, and I actually can't remember if I've ever had an answer to it. So when I smell a rat like an unfalsifiable claim, I'll just ask them, what state of affairs needs to be the case such that you would accept that the prayer wasn't answered, or that, the world around you isn't from God, or something like that, right? What state of affairs would need to be the case? And I don't think it's a particularly, I try to phrase it as straightforwardly as I can. And I've never had somebody actually go, you know what? Here's what would need to happen. And then it would be the case that God doesn't, right? Why can't they do it? Because I can smell up ahead that this is an unfalsifiable claim. So I'm smelling the rat, and then I just ask this question, and instead I get some sort of rambling response or no response at all, and it goes on to something else. And that sort of just tells me a lot about, this sort of thing. Because somebody would be able to give me, I could say, hey, the universe, if God existed, then I wouldn't expect suffering. I would expect us to be able to teleport anywhere in the universe. I would expect us, if this universe is made for us, that we would in fact be able to, go all over the show, live much longer, etc., etc. There'd be some expectations that I personally would have, and those aren't being met. It's exactly the opposite. And so I can put forward falsification criteria, but people with these sort of ideas can't always do that. And that's, once you do it enough, you'll kind of smell these things coming, and then that question just seems to be a showstopper. It's very rare. Like I say, I can't remember anybody ever having gone, here's the criteria, because I can smell it up front that there just isn't going to be any criteria, especially this praying to God and getting some sort of response type thing.
Oh boy, yeah, it's so difficult to get a coherent argument out of them. Amina Sada, I don't know who that is. Do I need to remember her name? I don't know how I'm going to do that. I will write it in here, so hopefully that I'm going to see this at some stage and see if I can find her. Amina Sardar. I'll see if I can find her. Okay, the next segment that we are going to be addressing is...
It's puzzling. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
There you go. So we're going to be looking at the Reader's Digest. Oh, I'm not actually allowed to say that. They've got copyright on this. What do I call it? The mercifully brief and condensed Quran, or the condensed, concise Quran. Condensed, concise Quran. There's all the K's. So what has happened? Let me share what we did in the past. Share this one. Let me make this one a bit smaller. There we go. So we're in chapter 11, and we were looking at the Jews, Moses, and how Muslims fit into this picture. And we are now looking at, by the way, somebody said to me, you know that non-believers hardly ever appear in the Quran. And I created a diagram where I showed plus minus the contents of the Quran regarding heaven and hell, in other words, the spiritual side, how to get to heaven, how to get to hell, and blah, blah, blah. And then the nonsensical stuff and the repetitive stuff. And then I think it was something like 35% actually deals with non-believers, more so than with Muslims. So this is quite strange that somebody can get the impression that the Quran deals more with Muslims than with non-Muslims or non-believers, when in actual fact you find this non-believer all the time. And this is
So were you meaning to say it references non-believers a lot more than believers?
Yes.
Okay, no, you said it the other way.
Oh,
okay, cool.
So it talks more about non-believers than it actually does about Muslims.
Yeah, okay.
And
That's what
this
I thought
is,
you were going to say.
Okay. And this is quite weird for me, that to think that somebody will say the opposite. And I found it quite weird. So, and here we see this again. You know, God will curse those who lie about him and those in denial who falsify Islam or the hereafter and prevent someone from joining. So God is going to curse them. So we see this all the time. And then it continues, chapter 11, which is called Hud, by the way, where there is no real translation. There is nobody really knows why it's called Hud. So they think that there was a prophet called Hud who is possibly somebody from the Old Testament. Maybe yes, maybe no. So we don't know. So just because he's mentioned, there is somebody by that name mentioned in this chapter, the entire chapter is called Hud. Why? We don't have no idea. And it continues, they have, in other words, those who are in denial, they have no protector, and punishment will be double, for they hear not and see not. Now, if I've been created to not be able to hear and not be able to see, then this is not really my fault, is it? And yet I'm being punished for being created, not being able to hear or see. So if I'm being mal-created, I'm being punished.
Yeah, pretty much the same in the Quran, the verse itself.
Oh, for those who have not heard this before, what I do is I read a sentence in the Quran and then I just take the essence out of it, because I don't go and just repeat what it says. I put my own spin on this. So this is how I understand what it says in the Quran. So I am reading the Quran and repeating what I think it tells me in a way that is easier to understand for people. Or sometimes not, because there's a lot of real nonsense in there, and a lot of things we can't really, I mean, the sentence might be sound, might be grammatically correct, but it doesn't make any sense. So 21 is, they lost their, I think, this is my mistake. No, hang on. What is the plural of soul?
S-O-U-L-S. S-O-U-L-S.
Like this. There's no E.
U-L-S. Yeah, there you go.
So they lost their souls. Okay,
I don't know how you can do that anyway. Obviously, again, we'd have to take that metaphorically, because if you a Muslim, presumably you have a soul that's somehow immaterially attached to you and floats around with you in some inexplicable way that nobody can seem to explain. And I would suggest that it's impossible for you to lose it. In other words, for it to go missing, because then what are Muslims suggesting that you can be a full person without a soul? I don't think you can. So presumably this is some sort of metaphor, and it's not meant to be taken literally. But then if it wasn't, why not just explain that?
Yeah, but if you go and pray, then magically the soul reconnects with you.
Yeah, but where was it when it was lost? I mean, were you still a person? Did you faint? I mean, do you need the soul to live, or is it just sort of a silent partner that you don't really have access to, but you believe is there? Whenever I ask people, I either get one of two things. Either it's like making it synonymous with consciousness, or it's some other undefined term that they can't really explain in any meaningful way.
Yeah, but it must be hanging around here somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere in the house, maybe in the attic, maybe in the cellar, maybe under the desk, waiting for me to pray. So if I say, "Dear God, please help me," then my soul goes cling and it's back, like a magnet. We don't know. And if it is hanging around here somewhere, what energy does it have? How does it exist without energy, without any connection to anything? Anyway, let's not get it. It's a never-ending rabbit hole, this thing. Sentence 22, they are losers in the afterlife. Well, I'll go with that. Another unfalsifiable, unverifiable, anything. Whereas 23 says believers will go to paradise, which is, the same as they are losers in the afterlife. Okay, so what? What does it tell me? It tells me absolutely nothing. But
That's the typical thing, isn't it? Carrot and stick.
yeah, it is the yin and yang, and not telling you what it actually is, what makes you a loser and what makes you something. What level of belief does it take before you can go to paradise? So, I have this picture where you go and you live all your life in sin. You go and eat pork, drink alcohol, you have sex with whoever, and maybe even gay, or maybe even you're bisexual, which must be even worse. So you're having like sex left, right, and center. And then when you're 80, you decide, no, now I'm going to be a Muslim. So you say the Shahada and say, there's no God but God, and Muhammad is the Prophet, and ping, you're a Muslim. And when that happens, all your sins are forgiven. So whatever you did as a human being, now when you're 80, you don't want to go and rob people. You don't want to go and screw people sexually now, left, right, and center. So when you're 80, then you can go and safely say the Shahada, and you're good to go. And you're going to paradise. This is the picture that I have. This is how Islam functions in my eyes. But it says in 24, blind versus seeing. So it's saying, well, you are blind, but you can see. You are deaf, but you can hear. And this is not equal. So you must believe, because seeing is better than not seeing, and hearing is better than not hearing. And therefore you need to believe, because you want to go to paradise.
Yeah, it depends on the context, right? If it's pitch black, then seeing isn't very helpful because you're as blind as the person next to you. And if it's like an incredibly loud noise that would otherwise deafen you, then perhaps not hearing it is a good thing. So I think it's context dependent. And that's just another thing, right? These are supposedly global claims, but we can easily find situations where that wouldn't be the best option.
Mm. And it's nice that Rob just pointed it out, because I hear this a lot. An atheist is like a guy in a dark room who doesn't have the light of Allah showing him the way. The Muslim sees a light somewhere in the corner, so he knows which way to go. And then my response normally is, well, no, I don't need this tiny light of Allah. I just go and flick the light switch. And then I can see and see exactly where I am, and I don't even need to go in a specific direction. So, I don't know, these analogies that they come up with, they're not so clever.
No.
Sentence 25. And now, I'm going to warn you, this is now going to go on for a long time. We sent Noah as a warner, because Noah had to warn the people, because I need to remind them. Sentence 26, worship me or else. This is this warning that you get all the time in the Quran. So, and then it says, well, Noah was a warner who told people about his God, who says, worship me or else. And the reaction of the people is, well, we non-believers think you and your followers are immature and liars. And then this Noah guy says, well, listen, guys, I'm getting it straight from the horse's mouth, and I can see what you can't, so trust me. If you see these sentences in the Quran, they're not like this, okay? It's a lot more involved, a lot longer, a lot more, detailed and stuff like this. So this is a very short way of me putting it. So then he says, you guys are ignorant. I don't want money. I'm getting my reward from God. And I'm scared of Allah, so I can't reject if you want to join. So this is the offer that he is making them. And he says, I will not pretend to be rich or all-knowing. I will not pretend that I'm an angel or that there is no redemption. But Noah, they replied, demonstrate what you are threatening us with. Now, that is one of the most reasonable sentences in the Quran. Demonstrate what you are threatening us with. So it's very rational, very logical, and leaving emotions out and saying, well, you say that we're going to get punished if we don't. Well, then show us what this is and where you're getting this from. And his answer, have faith, he said. That's it.
Yeah, and that I've picked it up from what's his name, Anthony Magna Bosco, and I think it's a clear and sort of helpful definition, at least in most cases. Faith is untestable trust, as opposed to trust, where you've got some way to test or infer that trust. Here it's untestable trust. So, but anybody can do that, right? Anybody can claim, hey, I trust something when there's no way to test it. That's not a method to find out what is true. Now, if you just want to take it on faith, that's fine, but then anybody else could do the same about anything, and you wouldn't be in a position to criticize them. So faith being untestable trust is not a mechanism that we ought to use in most circumstances.
Yeah. And I actually like that. I can never remember it. For some reason, I can remember there's the slightly longer one where faith is belief that can neither be verified nor falsified, which is down the same line, but for some odd reason I can remember it. And then Noah says, I am insignificant. And then this is a very funny story, because suddenly in line 35 it says, did he invent it? Switching to Muhammad, because did he invent it is the Quran, the message, the whatever. Did he invent it? No, I didn't. Allah says. So the funny thing is, in the middle of a story about Noah, suddenly the whole thing gets interrupted by a sentence which does not make any kind of sense, which does not fit in here, which does not belong here. And I came across this and I thought, what the hell is going on? Who is talking? Who is saying this? What is it that the Quran is trying to tell us? And I went into the tafsir. I went into Easy Quran. I went into all sorts of explanations. And nobody knows what this sentence is doing here. So some are saying, well, it's switching to Muhammad. Some say, no, it's not. And some people, well, it's actually Allah or not. So there are, 15 scholars and 16 different opinions. Nobody knows what this sentence is doing here in the Quran. So if you want to baffle a Muslim, you go and say, give me the context of sentence number 35. And they will start reading one or two sentences before and after, and it just doesn't fit in at all, because we don't know who is talking and why and what this means. Then it goes back to Noah. Those who believe will believe. No worries. Now, that how insignificant is this? This is like a truism, okay? The tall building is tall. Well, yeah. So
not informative or interesting at all, is it? Somebody said it to me the other day, yesterday actually. Somebody asked, who are you? I said, well, that's an ambiguous question, but I'm human. No, you haven't got the right answer. What's the right answer? Who are you? I am that I am. I said, thank you for giving me a trivial statement. Don't waste my time. Gone. I actually blocked that person. I very rarely block people. And I just blocked that person. I'm going like, okay, this person is utterly trivial. It's a complete waste of time. I am that I am. As if this is some Daniel Dennett, right? It's a deepity. It sounds profound, but it's in fact entirely trivial. And some people will go, wow, that's amazing. And then you ask them, well, what does it actually mean? Well, no, it just sounds amazing. As soon as you unpack it, it's just so trivially silly.
Yeah. And I think I've come across this person because I also got this answer from someone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, the thing is that there's not too many people around. So, you're bound, if somebody really has silly replies like that, they stand out. And then you sort of remember them, and this sounds familiar. Anyway, So to Noah, those who believe will believe, don't worry about it. Just build the ark and don't mention those who have wronged, because I will drown them. Now, this is to me quite interesting, because whoever wrote this realized that God should have a guilty conscience for drowning all the people. And this is the situation which is also mentioned in the Christian and Jewish Bibles. And this is where Pine Creek came in and asked the question, which to me is the most profound question of them all. I will drown them. So this God intentionally makes people suffer by drowning them. So you have a 2-year-old toddler who really has not done anything wrong, who will suddenly be confronted by water, and it will automatically be able to swim. And then after 2 hours, when it simply can't handle all the water anymore, which is rising all the time, it will drown. So this God is intentionally, cruelly torturing people. Because it is all powerful, it could just poof them into heaven or hell or whatever without torturing them in between. And the question that Pine Creek asked, do you think your God could have done that? And
Actually, I
this
think the
is
question you
brilliant.
asked is if he was standing next to it and God asked you, which one would you prefer? I'll do what you say.
Correct.
Which one would you take? And some of them, yeah, obviously, it was very uncomfortable for some of them. And I think one or two said this and then try and justify why that was the case. And they chose the one where they said, "Oh no, obviously I'll just poof them out of existence." But hey, God knows best. That was the kind of response that he got
Yeah.
from that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I stand correct. That was actually the beauty of it. Correct. That he said, if you are standing, if God would ask you, what should I do? What would you say? You as a human being, would you drown them? Would you torture them? Or would you just poof them up and down or whatever? And this is the beauty, the real beauty of it, because you as a human, your level of morality is much higher than this God. So anyway, so this is the sentence which I really would take to Muslims and say, listen, is this really the God that you worship? Don't even mention the people to me who have wronged, because I will drown them. Don't talk to me about them. I don't want to know about this. I'm going to drown them, but don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. Wow. I mean, this for me is a declaration of bankruptcy of this God of Islam. So this one sentence. So then it carries on. He built the ark and people still ridiculed him. And he says, well, you will see who laughs last. And then, this is funny, when the oven drowned, he was told to take a pair of each, and your family and believers, and none believed, except a few. Now, when the oven drowned is an idiom or something that the people at the time must have understood, because it says must mean that the water exceeded the height of the oven, which must be quite high. This is how I understand it. So now the funny thing is, we need to take note of what Muslims normally say. And Muslims normally say that this is not a global flood, it's a local flood. Right? We need to keep that in mind. Because now it says, he was told to take a pair of each. Why? Why would you take a pair of each species of animal existent at the time to save them, when this is just a local flood? Why would you take a kangaroo into this?
Yeah, but they
ark
wouldn't
if
say
it's
that, though,
just
Stops.
a
They're going to
pair
say
of
that
each?
they need to.
No, a pair of each. Each.
Yeah, but only of the animals in the local area that is likely to be flooded. Although it doesn't say
This
that.
is the
That's what they
problem.
want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
they want to infer that. But if, and I think you've got the verse there. Where is it? Oh, you're coming up to it still. If you climbed a tall mountain, you still drown. Then,
Yeah.
how could
That
that
will
be the
be my
case?
next
Is
point.
there like a wall
Exactly.
of water? Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah.
So take your family and take some believers, but none believed. So there's a contradiction right here in one sentence. None believed, except a few. How does that work? How can you say no one believed, then carry on with, well, except a few? Either it's none or it's a few. So it doesn't work the way that it's put here in the Quran. Then 41, it says, well, all aboard, blah, blah, blah. And then the ark floated and they left a son home alone. I don't know if his name was Kevin Home Alone or something. So he was at home, and then Dad Noah said, listen, son, why don't you come here with us? And he said, no, I can save myself on a mountain. But he drowned. Now this is the problem, because if he cannot save himself on a mountain, that means the water was higher than that mountain. And I think this is what you were referring to just now.
Yeah.
There's too much water for a mountain. Now, if there's too much water for a mountain, it can no longer be a local flood. That's impossible, because water will always maintain the same level.
It flows to the lowest level, doesn't it? So unless you're claiming a miracle and then you'd have some sphere of water, how is it that you can drown? Because let's think about it. Whenever you see rain, it hits hills or mountains and it flows down. Now, maybe they're going to try and make it up. Oh, well, he drowned in the water coming down. But if you're on top of the mountain, then obviously you wouldn't drown, right? So if I just look at the verse here, I take refuge on a mountain. So on a mountain would, to me, mean on top of a mountain, right? Not on the side or anywhere else, but on a mountain would be at the highest point on a mountain. Obviously, that makes sense, right, to avoid the rising water. And if that's the case, then in order to drown, the water would have to rise higher than the highest point on the mountain and be there long enough so that, you couldn't touch the bottom, and you eventually, as you pointed out, if you were a person who could swim, or even if you wouldn't, it would take however long it would until you get tired and eventually, drown, because you just can't keep yourself afloat. But then, water should go to the lowest level. So either it's being propped up in some way, or it's a miracle. If it's being propped up, then you would expect it to be in some sort of container. And if it was outside of this local area, so presumably it's almost like I imagine it like the parting of the Red Sea. If you came upon this, if you were outside this local flood area and this was happening, would you walk up and you'd suddenly see this massive wall of water that's, a couple of hundred, or a couple of kilometers high, that's somehow being kept in an invisible barrier? If it wasn't like that, can you explain? Exactly. If it's not like that, can you explain how it is that water runs to the lowest point? And if it isn't global, how is it that the water could rise above a mountain and only be local?
Yeah. Now, the other problem I have is, come on, they had fishermen. They had trade routes. They had boats coming in and out. The ark was not the only thing capable of floating on top of water. So this is stupid. This is absolute. I mean, if you look at the original story, which is like 6,000 years old, then I think you can excuse it, because the people were not really inclined to think and to make logically sound arguments and to think things through. But people today should be. They should be capable of seeing that there's a huge problem here, and they don't. For me, this is quite funny. There must have been other boats around.
Not only
even
that,
if not, there's logs and all sorts of things that are swimming.
Well, it depends how long it was, right? Maybe they can say, well, after you wouldn't last on a log for 40 days, and maybe that's true, but also not all humans were concentrated in this local flood area. So did the other humans survive? It seems to suggest no, they didn't, because they would have been disbelievers, i.e., or non-believers, whichever. So people in Australia or elsewhere, presumably there were humans elsewhere that didn't even know about this flood, that weren't affected in any way and survived, and they weren't believers in Allah, right? So again, maybe that's a question to ask Muslims. Well, if you think it's a local flood, do you agree that there were humans who were spread out across the earth at that time, and so the majority of the human race would have survived this local flood? In which case it only wiped out some people in that particular area, which doesn't seem particularly effective, unless you're trying to wipe, and then you can think of far better ways to do it. So how do you explain that?
Because what is the point of this? Who is going to be the one who gets drowned? I mean, you're just going to have 5 or 6 people who you're going to drown, and you're creating all this buha, making an ark from, and the guy was 950 years old when he had to build this thing. So this is quite ridiculous. And by the way, this is another, bone of contention here. Was he 950 or not? because a lot of Muslims realize that this is a bit far-fetched. So they're saying, well, no, not really. And the 950 is just metaphorical again. It's quite strange.
Yeah, when things don't work out, let's just call it metaphorical, right? We just won't have a criteria other than to appeal to reality when it looks so stupid that we can't accept it as being, a literal thing. Then we'll just say, yeah, it's metaphor. Well, how do you establish that?
It's quite silly, actually.
What verse are we on now? Because it's after 9 already. It's 10 past 9.
44. Okay, let's quickly run through this then, because this is all one story. Actually, this goes on another 10, 12. Okay, let's quickly run through this. He thought he can save himself on a mountain, but he drowned. And then the water disappeared, and they landed on Judi or something. Now, I put a footnote here, because they say it's a small mountain at the crossroads of Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. Now, please note that the people who wrote the Quran, were not in Mecca. They were not in Medina or Yathrib, what it was called in those days. They were 1,000 kilometers further north. And that is why the guy knew about a small mountain called Judi or whatever. And this is exactly the area where the Quran comes from, in this sort of area between Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. So this is another indication that the Quran actually comes from that area. Remember last time I said there was it was way too high for a local flood. Yeah, on top of that. But remember, it's a perspex swimming pool type of flood. It's like, yeah. I mentioned that there was that the Quran mentions a eclipse. And this eclipse, the Sirah says it, that Muhammad's son died when there was an eclipse. Now, if you go and you look at the dates and you look at all the eclipses that happened, you find only one eclipse during that time period, and that was 1,000 kilometers further north than Mecca, exactly in this area of between Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. So there are many, many indications that the Quran actually comes from there. So
I've just got to quickly relieve myself, so I'll be back in a sec, so you carry on the stops.
Okay, I'll just quickly read through this 10 sentences. Noah informed Allah that his son was part of his family. Oh, really? So Allah needs to know that the son was part of his family, because he didn't know that. So, yeah, it was nice, he informed him. And that Allah, was the best of the judges, something Allah also didn't know. So, yeah. So, Allah says, no, he was not, let it go. So he's trying to console him, telling him, no, he was not really part of your family. He was not a good guy. So just forget about it. Let it go. I tortured him. I drowned him. I deserve to do this. I'm the best of the judges. So therefore, if I go and decide to kill somebody, then this is the way it should go. And then Noah says, sorry, sorry, boss. I didn't intend to ask the question. And then Allah says, it's all good. Get out and have lots of sex. And then says others will be punished. Now, what others? He says that all the people were drowned, and now they're supposed to have lots of sex so that they will have lots of people coming after them, lots of nations, and they will be punished. Why? If they're all coming from Noah, who's the good guy, from the family that was saved, why were they saved if they are going to create a new generation of people who will be wrongdoers the same way as the previous one was? So it seems like this is a never-ending story. So every couple of generations, there should be a flood where all the people get killed, a few are kept alive, then those have kids again, and then they will have wrongdoers, and so this is a crazy, crazy idea, really. And then suddenly it says, be patient. And then different comment. I mean, again, the sentence does not fit. And when I looked at it, it seems to address Muhammad. Be patient. What's he got to do with it? He's just the one who's getting the story. Why do we suddenly have Muhammad's opinion here? This is quite weird. Anyway, then Allah continues and says, we sent Hud, and now this is the only time that this guy is mentioned. And he comes from the city of Ad, or the tribe of Ad. So we sent Hud from Ad to Ad. So I don't know how that works. So to send somebody from a tribe to that tribe to tell them, worship Allah. And this Hud says then, I don't get anything out of it, so use reason. Say you're sorry and you will get rain for strength added to your strength. That's what it says in the Quran. Okay, I'm not making this up. This is what it says in the Quran. This is how silly it is. Go and ask a Muslim what chapter 11, sentence 52 means. Say you're sorry and you will get rain for strength added to your strength. I don't know what this is supposed to be. So they declined.
Maybe he'll just strengthen you or something. He'll just strengthen
but why
whatever
strength
strength you
added to
have.
your strength? I mean,
Yeah,
rain.
that's
Why
not a nice
rain?
way of saying it. Yeah.
Silly. Anyway, they declined without evidence. Interesting. They declined without evidence. So they should. Why should they not? Why should they believe something without evidence? So this is a good sentence in the Quran. And then they accused him of being, it doesn't mention, but they accused him of being influenced by bad gods, which he rejected and says, and scheme against me. So there we have it. That's all that I prepared for today.
Cool.
So that was actually quite a lot. The story of Noah, a full 30 odd sentences that we got under our belt explaining, and a lot of questions that remain unanswered as per usual.
Yeah.
Okay, and that brings us to our theme segment, which is going to be critiquing a video. And by the way, guys, if anyone in the chat or somebody listening to this afterwards, if you have an idea, if you want something clarified, if you want something that we do or that we investigate or research or something, just let us know. All right, we're always welcome for new topics. We're always welcome to do things that we haven't done before, because the standard topics of Islam, of the Quran, of the Hadith and everything, we've covered. So it would be nice if we can get something new, if we can get something different. Or if you have specialized knowledge or specialized information, you're always welcome to present it, even if you are a Muslim. Okay, we're not biased here and saying if you're a Muslim, the only thing that you will tell us is nonsense. No. We are quite happy to have you here. We're quite happy to give you a platform that you can present what you want to present about Islam, but be prepared that we will question this. But it's quite easy to do that, and there's no problem in doing something like this. Can be arranged. So if anybody has an idea or any suggestion, go ahead. All right, Rob is now ready, and we're going to go and look at a video from Speaker's Corner. Because remember, Imran, he left YouTube for a while. He said he can't handle this, but for some odd reason he was back within a couple of days or weeks or something.
Okay, let's go. So this is Atheist and Muslim Discuss Good and Evil.
When you go through something difficult in life, yeah, there's two ways you can react. When someone is hit by a trial or tribulation, oh my God, what's happening? I can't deal with this. I've had enough. I'm fed up. I'm done. Yeah? The other way is, I'm going to remain patient. The one that made me, made everything, made this trial, is taking care of me. He's watching me. He is with me. God says in the Quran, Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin, that God is with the patient. The word used is with. Obviously, we don't say God is literally physically with His creation, but in His knowledge and His power, He is with us when we're going through.
Okay, so he's not really with you, but in his knowledge and his powers with you. What the hell does that mean? That just sounds like gibberish. So he's not really with us, but within his knowledge and his power. In other words, yeah, that's just, I'll try and make up something so it sounds like he's with you, but it's really uninformative. And yeah, I would consider that gibberish. With anybody that understands with is somebody's close to you, they're in connection with you, there's some sort of support that's going on that you can recognize and accept. And here,
an interaction.
Yeah, here it's a one-way thing. You think it's happening. How do you demonstrate that to anybody, even yourself? How can you do it? You can't, right? So this is just like a vacuous statement.
Rob, are you able to jack up the volume?
It's at maximum.
Okay.
So now, if you're listening and you're battling there, we all have to just push our headphones up a little bit. I've got it. Here's the volume. I can't go any higher than what this shows here.
No, but even in the StreamYard, because I remember there was some option that you could under some circumstances, jack up the volume of something, but I can't remember what this was and how to do it.
No, I'm just looking here. There's nothing. You can jack up the volume on your microphone, but not a video being played. No.
Pity.
Just if you're listening, everybody, you have to turn your headphones up. Unfortunately, Speaker's Corner, sometimes the video, the audio quality is not as good. The Muslims now have got plenty of money there, and they now put like 5 or 6 mics on people. So you get this guy walking around and he's got all these mics plugged onto him. They might not have had this at this stage.
So we're patient, right? So if we have this understanding, it opens up a doorway, a reality which we didn't know before, right? And what this does, let me just
slow this down.
Through a trial and tribulation, we can be patient through it, see it through, because after every hardship, there's ease. That's another principle in the Quran. With every hardship, there will be ease, right?
Okay, that's demonstrably false, right? There's people that have continuing hardship. How do you establish them when they've got ease? Is this claim, again, I smell a rat here, is this claim falsifiable? And we can go to people who go, you know what, I still have this hardship. It's not ceased. It's been years, whatever the case is. And if the claim is simply the only time that it ceases is when you die, well, again, that's an unfalsifiable claim or a trivially true claim in that sense. And that's, again, uninformative and uninteresting. So you'd have to be the case, if you're making a global statement, that everybody's trials and tribulations eventually get eased. But we know that's not the case for some people. And in fact, how do we know this? Because the number of people that commit suicide. So those trials and tribulations get the better of them. And if by what you mean is eased, and you're going to accept that suicide is easing it, well, great. But now you're advocating for something that I don't think you want to go down that route. So again, I think this claim is, again, so obviously demonstrably false in a number of places. And if you're going to cherry pick a few, well, again, that's not informative or intellectually honest. So this is just, again, like a vacuous statement to me. I don't know what your thought is, Stops.
No, I agree. This is very much so, because it's pretty much useless what he's doing here, because he's not really giving us anything substantial. And for me, this sounds like rehearsed sound bites when he doesn't really know what to say because there's no contents.
Yeah, I think it's like it's like the dawah training or preaching to his dawah people sort of comes out here as if this would be informative to anybody else.
Exactly, yeah.
And unfortunately, Speaker's Corner, unless you've been doing it a while, oftentimes you speak to lay people that haven't had these conversations, that don't know how to think and question these sort of things. And I was there, and we've all been there. And I'm not some genius or anything. I've just moved along since I was last in Speaker's Corner. But that's because I've taken time to focus. I have lots of conversations. I learn and develop, and that's what will happen. But in these cases, is people oftentimes just wandering past. So they won't critique this like we are now. They'll just hear these platitudes and kind of go on. But I think we're stopping it to show that these are vacuous platitudes. There's nothing there. There's no falsification in this. And if you can't do that, I can make claims as well. I did it the other day. I said to somebody, hey, here's a good example. Because I use the 10th dimension as an example. And there is actually a model of string theory where they posit 10 dimensions. But this is specifically for Christian presuppositionalism, but you can use it for other things. And so I said to this particular guy when I heard him making an unfalsifiable claim, I said, hang on, I'm going to give you a claim now, and it's the following. That if you meditate deeply and profoundly enough, you will get access to the information that the 10th dimension is the ultimacy of all reality. And I said to him, and if you come back to me and you say, but I haven't had that realization, I'm just going to say to you, you haven't meditated deeply or strongly enough. And you can, and you keep coming back. Correct. And the only way, and when you do meditate, then you will find that 10th dimension is the ultimacy of reality. And he sort of didn't get it, and I had to explain, well, hang on a moment, there is no way to falsify this. I'm just going to keep telling you that you haven't meditated enough. It's the same sort of thing here. And if you do find out the 10th dimension, then I'm vindicated. But there's no way for me not to be vindicated. I've stopped myself from being shown to be mistaken. And this is the sort of things that often happens in cults and so forth, right? With claims that can never be falsified. It's always somebody else's fault, or same thing with the psychics and that sort of stuff. The energy wasn't right. There's always some excuse why it doesn't work. Same thing here, or with my example, or in this case as well.
And we know, because you literally, how old are you? 29. How many hard times have you had in life? You probably can't even count them.
Yeah, no.
Yeah? But you made it through them, yes? They've come to an end.
But they haven't come to an end though.
What,
They always
they
more.
know they are, but the specific ones come to an end, and then
That's why you should just use here, and it just came to me in the moment thinking about this, right? Just use suicide. Hey, Imran, that person that jumped off, did their hardship come to an end? And if you're going to, like I say, claim that, killing, dying, taking your own life is ending your hardship, great, but now you've just advocated for suicide. Are you as a Muslim going to advocate for suicide? There's no ways he's going to accept that. That's an easy example to refute the silly claim. Because yes, there's going to be a lot of people that have overcome hardships, but there's, as we pointed out, many people that haven't, and they've taken their own lives, and that hardship hasn't gone away.
then another one comes, and another one.
I wish I was there and I could have brought this up, that sort of example. What is he going to say to that?
Yeah, some of them come to an end.
Okay.
Some of them are still there.
But God knows it.
Yeah, God knows everything.
But He doesn't need to subscribe to something.
No. So I'm going to get to that particular point. So here's the thing: when someone is patient through that trial, that tribulation trial, it's going to come to an end. When he gets through it, he comes out a better person.
How did you establish he comes out a better person? Some people have trials and tribulations and they've come out worse. I mean, this is just claims, and unfortunately, obviously, the person that's there, although I think he may say something a bit later on, you've got to challenge this. Hang on a moment, but are you saying that everybody does? Are you saying that nobody that has trials and tribulations comes out worse? Where's your evidence for this? Are you making a universal claim? Have you interviewed or checked everybody on this planet? Or are you just making vacuous claims, hoping that nobody's going to challenge it? I mean, this is ridiculously poor. Luckily for him at the moment, nobody's challenging him. I don't know. The guy kind of did a little bit there, but not strongly in any way.
He comes out a more developed person. And there's many examples of this. Well, your life probably is a testament.
It's not because, well, I just don't. I wouldn't agree with that.
Would you say
I wouldn't say I'm like. Of course, I'm a better person. I'm more mature, but it doesn't.
More life
But that's the
experience.
point.
I have more life experience, but it doesn't.
And then another scenario will come up, and then you'll
it's
go
just-
down.
It's a process of development, right? For example,
Yeah, but if he was a Muslim or any faith, you would say that God knows the path he's following.
yeah, so we're going to get to
And he doesn't know that.
Yeah, no, we're going to get to that point. I'm just giving you the principles at the moment, right? So the point is, for a Muslim, during a time of hardship, he understands what's going on, why it's happening, and he's patient through it.
No, you don't. That's nonsense. Of course you don't know why and how and what. You're just assuming now that, well, there's something that I've done wrong and this is why I deserve that. That's the only thing.
Yeah, exactly right. That's all that'll happen is a Muslim will go, oh, this is a test. This is a test. And again, the question is, when is it not a test? When could you specify some criteria by which a state of affairs happens and you go, this is not a test? All they're going to say is everything's a test. Well, great, but that's not going to work for everybody. And again, I think that's just like an unfalsifiable position to hold. So it's not impressive or informative. Just give us a criteria by which you could establish that it's not a test. And then we've got some way to differentiate between test and not test. And if everything's a test, well, then it's meaningless because you have it's just everything. It's like everything is God created. Okay, well, give me a criteria for something that isn't God created. Well, I can't do that. I've had people say to me, I can't. That's a hypothetical. I can't give you that. Thank you very much. We're done. I could do the same. Anybody could do the same. This criteria is everything natural. Give me something not well. No, I can't do that. Well, nobody's going to be impressed by this or going to feel like they're going to be convinced.
And he comes to the end of it a better, stronger person. But if someone doesn't have this understanding, doesn't have God, it's a very lonely place for. And I would agree to that. When you go,
It's a very lonely place. It's funny this. I haven't watched the whole video in its entirety, but I talked about this to somebody else. Imagine having a phone. You pick up a phone, and it's just silent on the other end. And you're talking, right? You're pouring out your heart, and you're asking for help, and the other end is just silence. You don't even know if there's somebody on the other end. You don't know if the phone line is cut. You don't know what's going on, and it's a constant just this talking. Pouring out your heart, asking for help, and it's complete silence. Same thing here. How many believers have called out in times and there's been no answer? If we were honest, if there was any way for us to check, probably the vast majority of believers have at some point have called out or asked for prayer and it's never come. So to say that it's lonely for us, you guys just take it that there is something out there, but you don't have an answer. When you don't get an answer, instead of you going, hang on a moment, why am I not getting an answer? You just brush it off. Well, there must be some other reason. Well, that's bollocks. If you think that you've got that we're lonely and you're not, because you're speaking to a dead end on the other end, and that's giving you comfort, thinking that there's somebody there when you're getting no response, good luck. We recognize there's just nobody on the other end of that line. You guys just want to pretend there is, but you've got no reason to believe it.
Are you touching a cable?
Am I? I hope not. Am I? Is it my audio?
There was a lot of crackling as though you were touching a cable and made a loose connection.
Oh, no. I'll try to keep still here then.
It was just...
Is it okay at the moment?
Yeah, it was just 10 seconds.
Okay. Oh, okay.
When you go through hardship, when you go through difficulties, you may have friends and support and family members and good community around you.
Oh, so we're not actually alone then. We have got people around us. Don't contradict yourself so quickly. At least give it a bit of a gap.
But internally, it's a very dark, lonely place because you don't know what's going on. You don't know.
What did he say? Eternally or internally? What the hell? What did he say there?
Family members and good community around you. But internally, it's a very dark, lonely place because you don't know what's going on. You don't.
Internally, it's a dark place.
No, eternally.
I thought he said internally it's a dark place, like
I thought it's
inside
forever.
you.
Okay, what does it make sense? Does it make sense to say forever, or does it make sense to say just inside you?
Let's see if we can hear it. I'm going to turn it up a little
I
bit.
think
Sorry
both
for
make
this. We just
sense.
want to hear.
You have friends and support and family members and good community around you. But internally, it's a very dark, lonely place because you don't know what's going on.
It definitely sounds like internally to me, but yeah.
I think he's making a mistake. I think he wants to say eventually, because that
Could be.
that would make
Dunno.
more sense.
But internally, is he of the view? Let's just carry on for a few seconds here.
You don't know if it's ever going to end, and there's no ultimate hope of it. Right?
Oh, well, ultimate hope. Great. So now we get on to ultimate hope. So you don't know when it's going to end. Well, you don't know when it's going to end. Muslims don't know when it's going to end either. You just have a belief that there's some ultimate hope, but you can't demonstrate that. So when you say there's ultimate hope, you're just begging the question against somebody who doesn't think there is ultimate hope or accepts that there isn't ultimate hope. So making a claim that that you haven't got ultimate hope, immediately I'm going to stop you and I'm going to say, hang on a moment. Can you demonstrate that, in fact, you have got this ultimate hope? Oh, well, if God exists and he's done this, da-da-da-da. Well, demonstrate that's the case. You're just begging the question against my position. But even if God gave you something, what does it mean to be ultimate? Just that God said it? That's entirely arbitrary. He could have said something else. This is completely vacuous. And once you get underneath this, you know what this guy's saying, there's just nothing to it. It sounds good to him and his fellow Muslims, because they haven't thought about this at any deeper level. So they just repeat what they've heard and think that this is somehow, a more superior position, when in fact, a little bit of critique and we find out that there's nothing under the hood.
Hmm.
You can't have hope in an
faith
accident.
will be the same. They wouldn't know.
No, we do know.
But you don't know.
Of course we do. We know through Revelation and God's revelation. He tells us that with every hardship there is ease. This is what God's telling us. If it's from God, then it's necessarily true. Right?
That's it. Yeah, that's the only thing. That's the only thing. It's from God, and therefore it's true. That's it. It's so easy. How can you argue with that? It must be like that. Oh, come on.
Yeah, even if we did the internal critique and we went, okay, if it's from God and you could somehow know that it's the case, at the moment you can't know that, but you obviously have a high degree of belief in whatever it is you believe. Yes, I could accept that whatever God says is true, but that doesn't mean that you have an ultimate purpose other than God just saying it. But God saying it isn't any more, it's just as arbitrary as me having a purpose for my own life, because it could have been different, unless you want to claim that it could not have been different. But again, it's more a sophisticated Muslim that would have to. I won't go into it now, but I don't think a Muslim who understands it is ever going to say, well, no, this is the only way it could be. This purpose is the only purpose that God could have done, because that would limit the power of God in some degree. So they wouldn't say that this is the only purpose. So if it isn't the only purpose, or it isn't the only one that God could have given us, well, then it's entirely arbitrary, and that doesn't seem ultimate to me in any way. I'm not going to accept it as ultimate. Ultimate would be something that's a fact of the matter, regardless of even a God's opinion, because a God's opinion is just a different opinion to mine, just a more powerful opinion. That doesn't make it any better of an opinion. That is ultimate.
I don't think that's exactly true, because you can just keep facing hardships until the day you die.
No doubt, bro. My point is this. Let me
Muhammad
clarify.
had
So how are you going to
Yes,
explain that?
Many.
absolutely. Okay, here's the thing. Let me clarify my
So
position.
I mean, not every hardship is followed by ease and followed by, me becoming more mature and more wise and more experienced. That's not necessarily true. There are some hardships that just destroy people.
Yeah, but I know. But let's not be too literal. What I mean is this.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
I know. So actually, you've granted that your previous case, you've accepted that your previous assertions were false. But
But you
did
were
you
wrong,
hear
yeah.
there? Let's not get too literal. But hey, I'm giving you literal examples. But when you tell me, and like I say, the suicide case, so this guy actually did sort of bring up, he didn't bring up the suicide, but he did bring up that people don't always get, redemption, or don't always get wise, or whatever the case is, or better. Then sure, but let's not take it too literally. At this point, you're talking to a sophist, right? He's accepted that his own point has been refuted, but his response, and this is a Muslim tactic, let's not get too literal. So I'm going to hand wave this away, and the gullible people who are watching, by the way, over here will just say this is just an amazing video. But now when we stop it and show you what's going on here, hopefully if you're a Muslim and you're watching this, you might reconsider. Hey, let's not get too literal. My point has been refuted, but my response, hey, let's not get too literal. Instead of going, do you know what, you're actually right, my point was wrong. Because if my point was wrong, then this entire attempt at an argument has been undermined. So instead of me conceding that, I'll just say, don't get too literal.
Is this. For example, you may have a chain of 4 hardships in a row. And after those 4 hardships, for example, your mother may die, your father may die, you may lose your job all in 1 month. Yeah? But then there will be a period where there will be good times. So it's not saying...
It's like in a casino. like throwing dice. I mean, if you lose all your money, at some stage you're going to hit the double sixes or something.
But do you notice, right, he doesn't have the cognitive ability, or he's just ignoring the previous point. What he's just said now doesn't undermine the previous point, right? Which is, there are some people, they could have 6 or 7 and they'll eventually die, or something will happen. There won't be some redemption. They won't be wiser. So it's almost like he's ignored that entirely. Let's not be too literal. I'm just going to repeat my point and say, hey, you could have 4, 5, or 6 hardships, then you'll have some respite, or you'll get wiser. But the other guy's point of mine is that there are people who will never get that. And suicide is just a great example of that. They're under incredible hardship. People won't commit suicide, unless they're under hardship, and especially unless they're mentally deranged or something. But a person of normal cognitive ability will just get to the end of their thread, for example, and commit suicide. Are you going to claim in that case that there's some reward? Obviously not. Some respite, or they're a wiser person? No, obviously not. But his response was, let's not be too literal. Now I'm just going to repeat it. I'm going to add on that there's 3 or 4 more things, and then eventually they get a respite. And that's obviously demonstrably wrong. So it's like, either it's not clicking in his brain that he's been refuted, or it's just a case of, I'm just going to keep repeating whatever the response is to me. I'll just go, yeah. I'll say some words out of my mouth to sidestep that critique, and I'll just repeat the critique again, as if I repeat myself multiple times, somehow that makes it a better argument. Unfortunately, the gullible Muslims who are watching will go, wow, that's just amazing. They won't clock onto the fact that he's just sidestepped the critique. He's granted the critique, and now he's just repeated his initial claim again. This is...
he continues on his script. He just continues on his script and pretends like nothing has happened. This is just steamroller, and that's it.
But unfortunately, it takes us to, it's very rare that somebody on the other end of the line, although this guy is responding to some degree, will call this out in such a clear way as what we're doing here, that you can see this is just sophistry.
The other thing that I don't understand is, if he says, well, if the interlocutor says, look, you can have several disasters in your life and it will not let up. And then Imran says, well, you can have this, and he lists 3. And then says, well, after that, there will be some sort of an easing. Yeah, but how many of these, where's the limit? Do you have any kind of criteria after how many there must be some sort of an easing off? Or can this continue 15, 16, 17 times, and then you can still claim, well, you see, after 17 times, it did ease off, so my claim is still true. Is there a cutoff? Is there any kind of criteria that says, okay, this is the maximum allowed? Or is this just putting this out of the air and saying, well, whatever the case is, it must stop at some stage, and therefore I'm correct?
No, he won't have. He won't. I'll tell you now. He won't have a criteria, right? Because in order to make the point valid, you have to accept any number of hardships continually, one after another, and then go. At some point, they'll get respite, and then you bring up the suicide example, and you're done.
Yeah,
And then there's nothing left to be said.
Saying one. I'm not saying that.
I know
Do you see
you're
the point?
saying, yeah.
So let's be a bit more fluid in this. So if we take a very literalist approach, we understand.
There he goes again. I've been refuted, but let's not take a literalist approach. So what approach should we take? That's the question to ask. Hey, Imran, we shouldn't take a literalist approach. We've shown you that you're mistaken. What approach should we take? Should we just accept whatever you say gullibly, like probably most Muslims would?
That's exactly it.
Regardless if you believe in something or not.
No, I know
Just
this
to
is
be a time
reality.
of mourning.
We're talking
There's
about
going to be
reality
good
of
and
life.
bad times.
Yeah.
Hard times, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, you will go through hardships.
Even animals
Yeah.
show that.
Absolutely. But here's the
But
thing.
they don't believe in that. Like
No,
God.
sure. But the overall point that
Rob, sorry, I need to point this out. If this is the case, what is the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim? Shouldn't there be some sort of a different handling or management or some sort of a different something that happens between a Muslim and a non-Muslim? How can everybody have the same treatment? How can everybody have the same number of deaths per case of any kind of a chaotic, natural, whatever happens? And then you still claim that there is something out there that treats a Muslim different, when it's obviously not the case. So where's the differentiating factor?
Yeah, I think he'll just claim that, hey, God's with those people. But then they're not getting wise, as you pointed out. Let's say the tsunami of 2004, 2006, whichever one it was, right? That wiped out 200,000 people
In Indonesia.
Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, those areas. Many of them would have been Muslims. Wiped them out, right? They didn't get any respite. They probably cried out as they were drowning, "What's going on here? This is all a test." They probably weren't, to be honest. They probably weren't doing that. They were fighting to survive like virtually every other human when they're under extreme pressure and their life is on the line. They're not going, "Oh God, this is a test. It's all fine." They are struggling to survive, trying to keep their head above water. And they're doing exactly what an atheist would do. But his claim is simply, "Oh, but God's there with you." Well, demonstrate that God's there with you. Like I say, it's just picking up the telephone and there's no answer on the other side. You are just fooling yourself that there is somebody. They're just listening quietly. The rest of us know that the line is dead, and we recognize that. So we don't talk into the line. You guys talk into the line, just fooling yourselves that there is something on the other side, and they're just being quiet and listening patiently.
His life has a reason behind it, which is not supposed to be rosy and paradise. That's to come. This life, there will be hardships, there will be trials, but when you get through this, when you get to the other side, it won't even feel like a moment, right? And
Look how he trivializes this. It won't even feel like a moment. Tell that to all the Muslims who are locked up in China, who every single day it ends up they're being in a re-education camp that's not far off. Okay, they're not being burnt in furnaces, but it's a somewhat mild version of the gas chambers, for example. They're not being killed, but they're being tortured every single day. Tell these people that it's only a moment in time. The hubris that you have here, standing here in a Western country, in a free speech area, telling everybody that this will only be a few moments and you won't even remember it. Tell that to all the Muslims around the world who are suffering, or anybody else for that matter. But you obviously going to be more inclined to look at Muslims favorably than other people. Tell to these people. I read a story about a lady who was locked up unjustly for 2 years in one of these places. She unfortunately flew into China because they asked her to come over, and then they locked her up, and she told a story of it. And it was, I think I passed it on to you, Stops, didn't I? And it was horrendous. These people don't think this. So, and hopefully if they looked at you, they'd say, "Hey, Imran, why don't you come and join us in this camp here? Come and tell these Chinese that they're," and every day for 10 years you do that. And then come back and tell us there was only a moment in time.
Don't worry about it. Just
Yeah,
take
don't
it
worry.
in your stride.
In the afterlife, it'll be fine, right? But it's just a moment in time here, except for those people who are genuinely suffering, and you just trivialize their suffering. Why don't you go into suffering for a year and then come back and tell us there was just a moment in time?
It's actually sick. Yeah.
It is. But this is what happens to a human brain that has to try and rationalize these sort of things.
And also, if you have the right understanding of what's happening and the right connection with your creator and the right philosophy behind everything, you can get through these things in the correct way, right?
Oh, really? Yeah, that's just your opinion because you've never been under real hardship. Like I say, there's Muslims and in fact non-Muslims and many people around the world who have been through hardships that you probably wouldn't be able to endure. I wouldn't be able to endure. So you just, this intellectual thing doesn't play out in the real world.
Because no doubt there are people who go through hardships, right? And they don't really know God, or they're not connected to God, or don't know anything like this, just living their life, and it breaks them, it destroys them. It may not kill them, but they may eventually look at the wisdom behind it and may
Okay, what the hell is this guy saying? Well, then they may eventually look at the wisdom, so then they will be wiser afterwards. But I thought your
Well,
point
they
was
did.
that they wouldn't get wiser. It's
When
only
they did.
people who are connected to God who get wiser. Does this guy even remember what he's previously said, or is it these just words coming out without the brain engaged at all here? It's like baffling to me.
develop as a person, but at the time it really damages them, right?
Okay, but the same thing can be said of Muslims. At the time, it really damaged them. Then afterwards, if they had some hardship, they look back and go, "Ah, that was a test. I'm okay now." Exactly the same thing can happen, and you just acknowledge it yourself for non-believers. So your point is again mute. You just keep sort of refuting yourself. It's bafflingly silly.
So what Islam does is that it addresses the human on a rational level, but also on a spiritual and emotional level, right? So it gives the human.
Yeah, we can just ignore spiritual. Nobody can give a clear definition of what spiritual is and how that helps you in any way. I mean, you can believe in some non-material or immaterial thing, if you like. Nobody's ever demonstrated that it does anything. If again you want to believe and it makes you feel good, fine. But yeah, we can just, for the rest of us who are non-believers in spirituality, we can just ignore that. So you've got the intellect and you've got the whatever emotions. Just ignore the spirituality. Great. So we all have that. So what? What is Islam doing about that? You can address this with anything else as well. What makes Islam special? The question you really need to answer is, what is it about Islam that makes it special that no other non-Muslim has access to? That the rest of us would go, that is something valuable that we've got no access to. When you can answer that question, then you've at least got your foot in the playing field. At the moment, you're just cheering from the crowds, thinking you're on the playing field. You're not even on the playing field.
Human being the tools to go through everything in life. That's something very beautiful and profound about Islam, right? And it addresses from a more personal perspective the problem with you. Obviously, we can go through the formal logic and the formal argument, because from the Islamic perspective, I can easily break down that. So, because the argument, the problem with evil, is really a problem for Christianity, not for Islam.
No, you are so mistaken. That just shows how little you know about the problem of evil. It appeals to your God as well. If your God is all good or all merciful, and all merciful can be equated with all good, because at every moment what you would consider mercy, or what any of us would consider mercy, would be a good act in any case. So, and your buddy Hamza Torses, a couple of months back, talked about an all-loving, all-good God. So I don't know when this was, 2017. So maybe you've updated it, but your buddy Hamza disagrees with you. Hamza Torses, that is. So no, your God falls under this just as much as the Christian God.
Because Christians say God is only good, right? He's only love.
No, they say he's omnibenevolent. He's all good, whatever that's supposed to mean. You think your God is all merciful, which equates to all good as well. And your buddy Hamza agrees.
Yeah. But in Islam, we have 99 names, and at least 99 names and attributes of God, which are reconciled with each other, right? Meaning, he is the source of all goodness, but he's also
He's the source of all goodness. How is the source of all goodness not the same as being all good, which is what the Christians believe? Like, does this guy actually remember the two sentences that he said prior to what he says next? He sounds like he's refuting himself like every few sentences. It's bizarre. And we're only 5 minutes into this 11-minute video.
I don't think that he's actually thinking while he's talking. I think he's on autopilot.
Yeah, I think so, right? He's been taught the dawah, and these sentences are coming out, and he's not remembering what he just said, that he's refuted himself. Now, the other guy speaking to isn't, perhaps on the ball enough to stop this. Obviously, we're doing it from the comfort of our home, so it's a lot easier. In the moment, it's quicker because it's all happening in real time, but we can slow it down. But he's just refuting himself. He's the source of all goodness. How is that not all good? Which is what you claimed he isn't, and that applies only to the Christians. Absolutely baffling.
So the severe punishment. He is also the judge. He's also the one who
Which
has
could
full
be
wisdom.
said he's not a loving God.
No, not at all.
He's not always loving.
God's
He's
one of those.
sometimes loving.
Well, remember,
Well, if he's the source of all good and love is a good quality, then he is the source of all love, whatever that's supposed to mean. So no, it is the case. He just said that he's the source of all good, right? That's were the words that Imran himself used. And if love is equated with good, then he's the source of all love.
remember,
There is love of God behind tests and trials as well. Because if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, what you come out as, many people say this. I met a drug addict a little while ago. He went through drug problems. He went through the hard process of letting go of drugs. He rehabbed. He was fine. He was good. He was off drugs, and he was now a better person. And he was doing community work and helping other people come off drugs. See the development there. And this is a this is non-Muslim.
It's a navigation.
Okay, but you've pointed to a non-Muslim. How's that helping your
Exactly.
case? You've just shown that somebody can do it without Islam. I thought your whole point was that Islam gives you something special that nobody else has got. But now you're using an example of somebody who's a non-Muslim. Wow, this is like, it's like, I guess sometimes you just, we all have it to some, it's like a brain fart, right? You're just saying things and you forgot that you've undermined your own point like multiple times in the video.
Exactly.
5 going on 6 minutes here. Incredible.
Though. I mean,
it
it's
comes
not
down to
always
you as a
true.
person being
Yeah.
a human being, overcoming your
You
problems.
can go through hardships and never recover from
For
them.
sure, but
you can always be a drug addict until the day you die.
For sure, there is. We'll go through trials, but the thing is,
But what you're saying, what you're preaching, is exactly the same as the other 4,500 registered religions.
Yeah.
All preaching the same gospel, the help, the guidance. This is the right path.
I'll tell you one reason why I'm not.
Because there's 4,500, and yours in particular is not even the oldest, right?
Yes.
You know, you've got Taoism.
Christianity.
Okay, so this guy's kind of getting the sort of pointing out that there's all these other religions, that competing religions make the same claim. I think like I said, the point to make at this point is what is it that's special about Islam that we would all consider, virtuous or good, that only Muslims have access to? Can you give me can you give one thing that only is unique to Islam that other people who are non-Muslims would agree is good, that they don't have access to? That's the only question you really need to ask you. Otherwise, like this fellow is saying, it's the same as everything else. There's nothing better. You've got nothing unique or special. It didn't come first. It wasn't the last. You're just somewhere in the middle there. Nothing special.
And
Hinduism.
you've got many Chinese religions that are a lot older, with a bigger population. Well, not quite, but almost there. 700, 800 million. They all preach the same spirituality, I would say, in the Asian religions is a lot higher than Christianity or Abrahamic religions.
Yes.
Because of the way they've been
Well,
generations.
that's debatable, but I see what you're saying. But here's the
So
thing.
what you're saying is nothing new. It's exactly the same as what everyone
But
else
here's-
preaches.
And you bring me to my point. That's what I was going to say. So there's 2 points to what you just said. Number one, there is this, because like I was explaining this particular reality of issues and hardships and difficulties, right? Islam deals with it totally different from the way other religions do it.
I don't think so.
Not always, but for example,
Okay, so all you need to ask at this point is how does it deal with it uniquely differently in a way that other people would think is good? Because if you think it's good and everybody else thinks it's bad, well, that's totally uninteresting and irrelevant to anybody else. So how is it that Islam deals with it uniquely, that the rest of us can go, wow, that's something special that we can all agree is special and unique and good, that nobody else has access to? I'm not sure they'll ask that question, but that's immediately the question there, because he just made a big fat claim there. How does it do it? What's your argument that it does it? What is the specific thing or things?
with Christianity is a totally different perspective. Problem of evil. Are you a Christian? So if you look at Christian theology, they say God is the loving and is the good. So the problem of evil, that problem is a real problem for their tradition. But from an Islamic perspective, the whole scenario is different. Like I've just explained to the brother. But here's the thing.
You haven't explained it to the brother at all. You've contradicted yourself and you've refuted yourself along the way. You haven't explained anything. What you have said is a lot of words, but you haven't said how Islam is unique in that way and doesn't fall prey. And I think we've at least tried to explain how it falls prey exactly the same way. And you said he was the source of all good. The moment you make that claim, you're in the same ballpark as the Christians.
Regarding your other point, no doubt there are older religions than Islam, and no doubt many of the teachings are similar. I agree. And there's overlays and overlaps in many places. For example, the most fundamental thing, which is the belief in God, there are a lot of similarities within that belief across different religions.
It goes back 14,000 years.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. What we believe in, this is why in Islamic tradition, what we're told is God sent messengers throughout history. From when man first stepped on this earth.
130,000.
Yes, so
But then,
I don't remember the exact number.
name me more than 23 of them.
Here's the thing.
You can't.
That's a red herring. It doesn't
you
matter. No, but answer here's the thing.
Okay, so is the claim, so is he trying to acknowledge now, but not trying to get there, that what's unique about Islam is that they've sent all these messengers? How is
No,
that
he
unique?
doesn't care
If-
about that. This is the
Oh,
funny
okay.
thing. The guy says, yeah, but you had all these messengers. He says, no, it's irrelevant. All we have is a lot of messengers were sent. How many? Doesn't matter. Where they were sent? Doesn't matter. But he sent a lot. This is
And look,
useless.
that might be a unique thing if we could establish that all these messages have been sent, and in fact they sent the same message, and we looked around the world and we went, wow, here's the same message about this last prophet who would come, and he would be in the Middle East, and they say the same things. Look at that, over there in Australia, the Aborigines would send somebody, the Indians would send somebody, the Incas would send somebody, and look at this, they all say the same thing, and it all points to the Middle East and this particular time and this guy called Muhammad. Well, that's what I would expect. And I'd be going, wow, okay, there is something. How is it that all of these desperate places around the world that never had contact had all these messengers saying the same message? That's unique and special. What do we get?
By the way,
the exact opposite of that. They all have their own things. They don't know anything about Islam, which is exactly what we would expect if there were no messages sent.
TDS Dave is correcting us, and he's right, actually. Being the source of good is not the same claim as being all good, omnibenevolent. That is correct, because if you are the source of good, doesn't necessarily mean that you also adhere to it. So if you create a car, you're not necessarily a driver. So yeah, this is correct.
Okay, but if you're going to take that view, then it seems it's even worse for Islam.
It is.
Because if God is the source of all good, but he's not all good, which is what I was suggesting that it was, then that and I'm not sure if a Muslim would accept that. Maybe they would, but that seems to make their case even worse.
Yes, because it means that you can be the source of all good and then not do according to what you say you should
and not
be doing.
all good. In which
Yeah,
case
exactly.
you'd be less of a God. If all goodness is the highest attribute. If you're going to claim all goodness is not the highest attribute, whoa.
But technically it's correct, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to ask a Muslim. Do you think God is the source of all good, but that he could do something that is not good or evil? I'm sure they wouldn't say yes.
And of course, he's right. If it's a source of all bad, that doesn't mean that the God or the origin of bad is automatically bad. It goes both ways, yeah.
If you spread a message to all corners of the earth, right, 130,000 messengers, surely you would see their name and subscribe
Exactly.
them, rock, stones, something towards them for bringing them.
There you go, right? I didn't remember he said this, and I've made that point as well. That's what we would expect if all these messengers were sending the same message, and particularly they would have something in common that nobody else had, right? That would make it unique. This particular last prophet in the Middle East, in this particular desert area, and he will have this place where you would all pray towards, right? And all the cultures had that. That would be something that would be of interest and quite impressive. And that would be unique to Islam that nobody else had. It wouldn't make it true, but it would be unique in that sense, that here's what's going on.
A message.
Yeah, but I can argue
But
then.
you can't name
Well, no, but I
single one of them.
I can argue potentially. But here's the thing: potentially Krishna was a prophet. Potentially, I'm not saying he is. I can argue
So Krishna believes in
Buddha.
multiple
I'm
gods.
just saying, hypothetically speaking, I can argue because you can't correlate what the belief of Hinduism is today to what the original teachings were. We'll discuss.
So
that in
you
a second.
can't argue it. Why
can
say
argue
that
Buddha.
you can argue something that you cannot argue? Stop saying these things. If you can't argue them, then stop making the claim.
Yeah, so now he's trying to argue that Buddhism and Hinduism are somehow. And all you can do, and this is what potentially he will do, is try and cherry pick a few things. Look, they all point to God or gods. Well, that's not interesting at all. He wants something unique. What's unique about Islam? Something like Muhammad. Nobody else talks about Muhammad. If all of these religions pointed to Muhammad as the last messenger, or said something unique about Islam that wasn't, you couldn't generalize to other religions, that would make it special. Otherwise, you're just pointing to things that other religions can do as well. That's not the claim you really want to make here.
Buddha was potentially a prophet. We can say that. The point is this: it doesn't underline break my initial point, which is
Okay, but it doesn't break his initial point. He didn't understand or didn't accept this guy's point. This guy's point, and rightly so, was that, hey, here's what we would expect if all these prophets went out. He just says, oh, well, I can say these guys are all prophets. Okay, but why would you even contemplate and say that they are one of these 130,000 prophets? What reason would you have to believe that they are the same prophets that's being referred to there? And then you'd hear the cherry picking going on. But he just ignores this entirely. So he's not responding to this guy's point at all.
that God sent messengers with the message and people that call back to the right way throughout history, throughout time, to different people. Just because God doesn't provide the names of them doesn't mean they didn't come.
Okay, see what happens there again? I'll just repeat the claim. This is a common Muslim tactic. I don't have a response to what you just said, which is, hey, here's what we would expect if all these messengers were sent and Islam was the truth. It would point towards Islam in some unique way. Well, he's going to say, well, hey, I can hypothetically do all of these things, but now I'm just going to repeat the claim over again. Very, very common this. You'll see it with these Muslim apologists. When they don't have any sort of response to yours, they'll just repeat the claim. They'll sidestep your objection and then just repeat their claim over in slightly different words, saying the same thing. That's not an argument. It's not like a point that they are substantiating their argument. They're just repeating the argument in different words.
Do you see the point?
Fine. So we don't have any names.
No,
So
we
we
do
have
have many names,
the
but not all of them.
Aztecs and the Mayans,
Yes.
we have the Aborigines.
Yes.
Three of the oldest generations of human beings. Aborigines are 40,000 years old.
Yes.
Can you show me anywhere around Uluru, Ayers Rock, any depiction of Allah or God, a single God? Can you show me in the Aztecs, in the Mayan culture, anywhere that represents Allah in any of their...
Beautiful. Okay, there he used the word Allah, right? Something unique that only applies to Islam. Because what he would do, if he, I don't know what he's going to say now, but he could be slippery and just say, look, it refers to God or a God or something like that. Try and generalize it. Again, that's totally uninteresting. This guy's got a great point where it points to Allah. And how would we know that it's Allah? What is unique about that, right? There's one God that I'm sending the last messenger in, and he'll be in the Middle East. That would be unique. Now we can identify it. Okay, that's very likely Islam. Anything else could be any other religion. So good point here. Let's see if he actually responds to this, because he hasn't actually responded to any of these guys' points. He's just sidestepped them and then made his claim over and over again.
Their writing, scriptures, pictures,
I'll make a jump.
and they're 6,000 years old. Aborigines are 40,000 years old. So if you had messengers that spread to all corners of the earth, show me in ancient civilizations how they relate to you.
I'll make a general point and a specific point. The general point is this: if you look at studying major world religions, as they stand today, majority of them have been changed, the texts have been changed, much of it's been lost. Much of ancient religions, the scriptures and the teachings have been lost. They have fragments. Okay. That being said, if you still study them,
How's that in any way relevant to the point? He's asked you for where these messages would have been sent. Where's the evidence that these messages are talking about your specific religion around the world? And you make a vacuous claim here. What I think he's trying to do is say, hang on a second, the reason why we don't see this is because all of these have been lost. But then your messages were ineffective to begin with. And we know people have cave paintings, they have things, the important things in cultures around the world have been preserved. And it's not necessarily on parchment or whatever the case is. And your religion was supposedly preserved on rocks and stones and, bits of animal fur and all the rest of it. So you don't have a great standard there. I know you want to claim you do. You guys are deluded about this, idea that it's perfectly preserved. But hey, if you want to believe it, we can't stop you. But other cultures also did that. So even this claim, I don't think is a true one. But that's what he's trying to do, is show how all these other religions, we just don't have records. That's why we don't have all of this information pointing back. And I don't think he's got evidence of that. And like I say, I think the other cultures do have had better recordings. The Chinese recorded things on papyrus way before these people even knew what that was. And they've got good recordings.
And dear viewers, sorry about this. We have gone 2 hours, but it's only a couple of minutes. I think I spent too much time on the Quran, but I think it didn't make sense to stop halfway in the entire story. So bear with us. It's just a couple of minutes. I'm sorry for the delay and taking your time. Too much of it. Sorry.
Hopefully it's interesting for people. If not, we can stop now. Just let us know if you want us to finish off. We'll carry on going.
Let's go. Just a few minutes. Yeah.
Yep.
think the way they stand today, you see a very clear correlation. Take, for example, Hinduism, the Sanskrit, right? The Vedas. Yeah? If you study them, within the Vedas, the concept of one all-powerful God, the God, is there.
There we go. I called this, didn't I? I called this about 2 minutes ago. He's going to go with the most generalist claims that he possibly can. Nothing specific about Islam. Right? This is how he's going to try and. This is the only thing he can possibly do, because of course there is no evidence for Islam specifically. So he's going to try and show that other religions point towards one God. Look, they're all saying the same thing. No, they're not. You're cherry picking the most general possible claim you can. That wouldn't be impressive to anybody. What would be impressive is some specific claim. And you said you were going to make a specific claim. Let's see if you get to that in the last minute we've got here.
Yeah, I agree.
There are many other beings that they believe in, but the concept of one God is there. For example, I believe one of the sayings is "Ikam Nivedittu," right? That the Lord God is one. Okay, but the point is, it's a general point.
But that's the first written religion, 6,000 years ago.
But the specific point is this: much of what previously existed was lost to history. We don't have it. Much of it. Okay, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. What's your name?
Who was your first prophet?
What's your name?
Who's your first
I
prophet?
want to address you.
Who's your first prophet?
Our prophet?
Yeah.
Adam was the first person we said. We believe
So where's the literature from Adam? If Adam was your first prophet, right?
I'm Muslim. Are you off here?
That's actually a good point, right? If you're claiming that this is your first prophet and one that you revere, and you don't know the names of all these other ones, but where's the information from your first prophet? Where is that information? And if he's going to say that's corrupted as well holy crap! Now everything apart from Muhammad's teachings is corrupted. Well, then how can you appeal to those other ones as reliable? Only because the Quran says so? Well, again, you can take it on faith, aka untestable trust, but that's completely vacuous to anybody else.
But just look, Aaron. But one more thing, bro. Please consider what I was saying. Have you read the Quran?
Not really.
What exactly is he supposed to consider? You haven't even made an argument that you've substantiated. What the hell is he supposed to consider? Right? Again, like you said, stops. This is just a script. I've said nothing of substance, but hey, please consider the Quran. With this performance, I wouldn't want to consider the Quran. You would put me off if I was listening to this and using my critical thinking. I go, no, I wouldn't consider the Quran. Your performance has been utterly shambolic here. Why would I do that? You've not given me any reason to look at the Quran. In fact, you've given me reasons not to look at it.
Really? You haven't. Okay. Would you do me one favor? Are you here next week?
I'm here usually.
Around. Okay, I'll be around. Just if you can, and that's only if you're searching. Pick up a copy of the Quran. Just read something.
Hey, no worries. You do me a favor and present a cogent, valid, and sound argument, and then I'll do that. When you've done that, maybe I'll take a look at the Quran.
This is what I'm asking.
I won't promise you, but anyway, it was a nice.
It's worth a read.
Have a read anyway.
It was nice.
Nice meeting you. I'll see you next week. We'll carry on.
Okay.
He never gets to his specific.
The specific thing was that what did he say about the specific? That there was, again, I think it was more along the lines of that there was missing stuff from other religions. I'm not sure how that's specific. That's just a general point as well. So,
Because I was hoping for his example, because I didn't understand what he was saying.
I mean, that was an anti-dawah example if ever I heard it. If your mind was thinking critically there, I would have walked away from that going, this Islam is bollocks. If this guy is a representative, I can just dismiss Islam, right? If he's supposed to be a representative. Because if the claim from Muslim dawah people is that if they give you a good argument, then you ought to be persuaded. If they do as badly as he did there, then I ought to be dissuaded. That seems fair, doesn't it?
But you saw the comments. The followers of Imran are convinced that he did a fantastic job, when it's the opposite. I don't know how they get this. I don't know what their criteria is, their quality level. I don't understand when that works.
But the easy thing to do is to just ask anybody, right? If I come across them on Discord or elsewhere, I just ask them, what do you think is impressive by Imran or hijab or whatever? What do you think is impressive? And why do you think so? Because they can give you anything, right? Anybody could come up with something. Maybe they remember something. Why do you think it is? I.e., what good reasons have convinced you that X, whatever it is that hijab, Imran, whatever said is true? What are those reasons for you? Right? Now they have to think. Now they can't just repeat what they've heard. They've got to, if they're intellectually honest, they've got to give you some reasons. And that'll tell you whether any of these people actually have anything substantive to remotely, potentially substantive to say.
Can you see this on the screen?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. This is really funny. Okay. You go and read this.
Narrated Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, give food to the hungry, pay a visit to the sick, and release, set free the one in captivity by paying his ransom.
Okay, why I picked this one is that it's a direct contradiction to what the Quran says. Because give food to the hungry, sustenance is given to everybody, to anybody, all the time by God. So how can you be hungry? Pay a visit to the
Well,
sick.
presumably, yeah, go on.
No, it's the same thing. If Allah looks after you, and you are developed, designed, and created by a God, you should not get sick. You should be working perfectly. And
Yeah, but you know what they're going to say to this, Stops?
It's a test.
They're going to say, well, it's the well, they're going to say it's the hunger or the sickness of the soul or whatever, and you just pray to Allah and He sorts that out, right? You don't have to take this literally, which is what Imran said, right? Let's not take it too literally when my point is refuted. Well, let's try and make it figurative so I can sidestep your critique. Hey, we don't have to take it literally. Food for the hungry, well, food is for your soul, right? And what better place than Allah to feed your soul, right? That's what they can say.
Oh, then you can also say, release the one in captivity. The God could have
Well,
easily
that's just your
said,
soul,
do not
your
own
soul is
human
captive.
beings. No, exactly. It's, yeah.
Your soul is captive here on earth, and you know what? It'll be released when you die. See, you can make it figurative or you can make it literal whenever it suits you. It's wonderful, isn't it? You can dance between the two at will.
However, which way you want, exactly.
Well, that was extraordinary.
Okay,
I haven't come across somebody doing dawah that's refuted themselves so many times in such a short amount of time, trying to make an argument, then accepting that argument doesn't actually work, then trying to repeat it and accepting again that doesn't work, and then saying, hey, let's not take it too literal when the point is refuted, as if that's a substantial response. It was just baffling. So I think that was a good example of how not to do dawah. Now, the reason he'd get away with that is because, and a couple of the guys did ask one or two questions, but the reason they get away with this is because most people just get caught up in listening. Then their brains are not engaged to think critically and go, hang on, but you said X, you said Y, how does this, all of these questioning, and that takes time to learn. But I think that was a great example of how not to do dawah, or how to dissuade anybody whose mind is thinking critically from, wanting to look further at Islam. If the opposite is true, if the claim is that, hey, if I've done good dawah, then you ought to look at the Quran. Well, if you do poor dawah, like this example, then you ought not look at the Quran. That seems to me to be, the what's the word? The corollary of the first view.
And he's stolen Pluto. Poor Pluto. Thank you, ladies, gents. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for discussing. And like I said, if you have anything that you want to contribute, if you have a question or something, just let us know. If there's a specific video that you want us to look at, go and tell us about it. And if there's anything that you want to say or ask, or anything that is off the record, then you can do so on the Discord server. It's not the Discord channel. I always make that mistake, and I'm always embarrassed every time we play the intro.
There's the Discord server. If you haven't joined, I think it's in the description as well. Then join there. I won't be doing that tonight. I'm going to get some sleep. It's been hectic today, so I'm going to get some rest, and we look forward to seeing you again next Friday. Thank you, Stops. Thanks all the viewers, and if you've watched this as a recording, thanks if you got all this way. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye bye. Good night. See you here next Friday.